The colonial settlement of New Haven sat perched on the edge of civilization, where humanity's reach met the untamed wilderness of Kepler 442b. River that cut through the valley had no official name yet, but the locals called it the Serpent for the way it twisted through the canyon with violent, churning fury. Tom Walsh had come to this world as a maintenance technician, not a hero. He fixed atmospheric processors and recycled water systems, living a quiet life in a prefab housing unit at the edge of the human quarter. The Yevari, a native species who had welcomed humanity's presence on their world, lived in the settlement's other half, their architecture flowing and organic, where human structures stood rigid and practical. On the day, everything changed. Tom was walking the ridge path that overlooked the Serpent. The spring melt had swollen the river to twice its normal size, and the water roared with a voice that drowned out all other sound. He paused to watch the churning rapids, mesmerized by the raw power of nature unleashed. That was when he saw her. The Yevari child had wandered too close to the bank. Her blue-gray skin marked her as perhaps 6 or 7 years old by their developmental standards, roughly equivalent to a human child of the same age. She was reaching for something in the water, leaning far over the edge where the soil had turned to mud from constant spray. Tom started running before his mind fully processed what was happening. The child's feet slipped. She tumbled forward, her thin arms windmilling uselessly as she plunged into the Serpent's mouth. The water swallowed her instantly. Tom could see her small form tumbling in the current, already 50 meters downstream and moving fast. Every instinct screamed at him to stop, to call for help, to do anything except what he did next. He jumped. The cold hit him like a physical blow, driving the air from his lungs. The current seized him immediately, a liquid hand that pulled him under and spun him like a toy. Tom had grown up in Colorado, had swum in mountain rivers, had trained in swift water rescue during his colonial orientation. That training took over now, his body moving on autopilot, while his conscious mind struggled to process the chaos. He broke the surface, gasping, and caught a glimpse of the child ahead. She was struggling weakly, her head barely above water. Tom angled his body, using the current rather than fighting it, letting it push him toward her while he kicked laterally across the flow. His hand found her arm. He pulled her close, wrapping one arm around her small torso while he fought to keep both their heads above water. The Yevari child coughed and sputtered, her large dark eyes wide with terror. The river carried them through a series of rapids, bouncing them off rocks that Tom tried desperately to fend off with his free arm and legs. Pain blossomed in his shoulder, his hip, his knee. He ignored it all, focusing only on keeping the child's head up, on not losing his grip. Ahead, he could see where the canyon widened and the river's fury began to ease. If he could just hold on until then, if he could just keep them both alive for another minute, another 30 seconds, another moment. His feet found purchase on a submerged boulder. Tom pushed off hard, angling them toward the bank where the current was weakest. His arms burned with effort. His lungs screamed for air. The child had gone limp in his grip, whether from exhaustion or injury, he could not tell. The bank loomed closer. Tom's free hand caught a root, nearly ripping his arm from its socket as the current tried to tear them away. He held on, muscles trembling, and pulled them inch by agonizing inch toward solid ground. When he finally dragged them both onto the muddy shore, Tom collapsed onto his back, chest heaving, barely conscious. The child lay beside him, coughing up water. Alive. He must have passed out then, because the next thing he remembered was waking up in the settlement's medical center. Every part of his body hurt. A human doctor stood over him, checking monitors and nodding with satisfaction. "You've got 2 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder that we've reset, and more bruises than I can count," the doctor said. "You're also incredibly lucky to be alive. That river kills people, Tom?" The girl, Tom croaked. The Yavari child. She's fine. Shaken up, minor scrapes, but fine. You saved her life. Over the next few days, as Tom recovered, he learned the full story. The child's name was Leary. Her parents, Thale and Mora, were prominent members of the Yavari community, scholars who had been instrumental in establishing peaceful relations with the human colonist Dot. They came to visit him on his third day in the medical center. Both Yavari adults stood nearly 7 feet tall, their elongated forms graceful despite their size. They approached his bed with slow, deliberate movements, and Tom was startled to see that both of them had tears streaming down their faces. "Tom Walsh," Thale said, his voice resonant and deep. "You gave us everything. You returned our light to us." Mora knelt beside his bed, her long fingers trembling as she reached out but stopped short of touching him. "We have no words in any language that suffice. You dove into death itself to pull our daughter from its jaws." Tom felt his face flush with embarrassment. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Thale said firmly. 3 Yavari stood on that ridge. All 3 ran for help. You alone acted. You alone paid the price in pain and risk. You alone gave everything without thought of reward. They visited every day after that, bringing fruit from their gardens and stories from their culture. But Tom began to notice something strange. They would bow when entering his room. They spoke to him in tones reserved for reverence. When Leary came with them, supervised and smiling, she would not meet his eyes directly, as though he were too bright to look upon. When Tom was discharged and returned to his housing unit, he found his door marked with the Yavari symbols he did not recognize. His neighbor, a xenolinguist named Dr. Roberts, explained their meaning with an uncomfortable expression. "It's a blessing, a ward of protection, the kind they usually reserve for temples." "That seems excessive," Tom said. "Tom, you need to understand something about Yavari culture. They believe that true selfless action reveals divine nature. By their theology, anyone who would sacrifice themselves completely for another, especially for a child not their own, is touched by the sacred. You're not just a hero to them. You're something more." The full weight of it became clear the following week when Thale and Mora invited him to their home. He entered to find a gathering of Yavari families, perhaps 30 individuals, all standing in silence. At the far end of the room stood a small altar he had not seen in previous visits. His own face looked back at him from a painting on that altar. "What is this?" Tom asked quietly. "Gratitude," Mora said simply. "Every morning we light incense here. Every evening we speak your name with thankfulness. You are the reason our daughter breathes." "I'm not a god," Tom protested. "I'm just a guy who happened to be in the right place." "You were a person who chose action over safety," Thale corrected gently. "Who chose sacrifice over self-preservation. Who dove into the serpent when all others ran away. We do not worship you, Tom Walsh. We honor you. We remember you. We teach our children about you. Is that so wrong?" Tom looked around the room at all the alien faces, each one marked with genuine emotion. He thought about arguing further, about insisting they take down the altar, about explaining that he was nobody special. But he saw Leary peeking out from behind her mother's legs, saw the child who was alive because of one moment of decision, and he found he could not speak the words. "I'm just human," he said finally. "Yes," Mora agreed, and her voice carried a weight of meaning he was only beginning to understand. "You are." Word spread through both communities. Humans found it amusing and slightly awkward. The Yavari treated it as profound truth. Tom continued his work maintaining atmospheric processors, continued his quiet life. But now his walks through the settlement were punctuated by Yavari who would stop and bow, who would touch their hearts and foreheads in a gesture of respect. Thale and Mora's altar remained. Others appeared in Yevari homes. Not worship, they insisted, but remembrance. Not devotion, but gratitude. A reminder that heroism exists, that sacrifice matters, that one person can change everything. Tom never grew comfortable with it, but he learned to accept it with grace. He visited Leary regularly, watching her grow, teaching her to be careful near water. She called him Uncle Tom, which he preferred to the formal titles others used. The river still roared through the canyon, as it had before and would after. But now it had a new name in the Yevari language, the Serpent. That gave the hero back. The place where Tom had pulled them from the water became a garden, carefully tended, marked with a simple stone. The inscription, translated from Yevari script, read, "Here love proved stronger than death. Here a human showed us the face of the divine." Here Tom Walsh chose to give everything got, and though Tom still insisted he was just a maintenance technician who had made one impulsive decision, the Yevari knew better. They had seen what humans were capable of in their finest moment. They had witnessed courage without hesitation. They had learned that sometimes, on distant worlds under alien stars, a hero is simply someone who chooses to jump when others run away. The altar candles burned every evening in Thale and Mora's home. And every evening they thanked whatever forces had placed Tom Walsh on that ridge at precisely the right moment to save their daughter and show them the true meaning of selfless love.